Hello my friends and welcome back to the How To series. In this series we're going to be covering every single job that Final Fantasy XIV has to offer, and we are currently on our second healer, which is Astrologian. Astrologian is part of the pure healing family alongside White Mage. These two healers focus purely on, well, pure healing and regenerative healing. And Astrologian is quite unique, it's quite a busy job and it has this card mechanic which we will get into, so don't worry too much about that just yet. We'll get into it when we get to it. If you're new to the How To series, what we do here is we go over every single ability a job has to offer and we break down exactly what they do and how to use them. We'll then also go into a opener and rotation and just show you exactly how we're going to be opening and how our rotation is going to play out as an Astro. We'll then go through a high level dungeon example, showing you how we'll be managing our kit at level 90. We will then go into stat and gearing priority. How are we going to be gearing a Astro? How are we going to manage our stats and all that sort of good stuff? And then we'll finish the video off with some closing thoughts and opinions of how I feel personally about Astro. So with all that said and done, and without further delay, let us just dive right into the abilities. So to keep the video in a quite nice and organized manner, I'm going to talk about the healing abilities first, then I'm going to talk about the offensive abilities, and then I'm going to talk about the utility abilities. Please note that some healing abilities will tie into utility abilities, so try not to get too confused about that. We're going to try and keep this brief with some abilities which don't need too much explaining and they're quite self-explanatory. For example, Benefic 1 and 2 here are our primary single target GCD heals, and what these do is, well, they're just going to be raw heals with no added effects other than Benefic 1 having a added effect where every time we use a Benefic 1 we have a 15% chance to have a proc, and this proc is going to make our next Benefic 2 a guaranteed critical heal. So that's pretty good for when we don't really use Benefic 2 too much. We're using Benefic 1 more, then we have a chance to get that crit. I personally use Benefic 2 more than 1, but this is down to my personal preference in keeping tanks low and then healing them when they're low. The reason I do this is because Essential Dignity. Now, Essential Dignity is our single target heal. We get at level 15 and it has a 40-second recast time. It has an initial cure potency of 400, but when a target drops below 30%, it can go up to a maximum of 900 cure potency, which is incredible, and we want to be aiming for this. When we get to level 78, pretty further into the leveling stages of Astro, we'll get a second charge of Essential Dignity, which just makes this ability absolutely incredible, because then we have two charges of this amazing ability, and it just ties the Astro kit so well together. But we won't get that until level 78, so do keep that in mind. Our next ability is Aspected Benefic. This is basically our regen. If you played White Mage, you'll know that this is more or less regen. We'll get a level 34 and it is on the GCD. It has an initial heal of 250 potency, and for every tick of the regen, it's going to cure the target by 250 cure potency as well. So pretty good. Want to keep this up on a tank at all times, more or less, when we are doing dungeons. In a raid instance, maybe slightly different. And also if we have a warrior, then we might not need to keep this up at all times either. But when we have not a warrior, we might want to keep this up on the tank at all times when we're doing dungeon pulls, as this is going to help us out a lot and not have to use so many Benefic 1s and 2s during pulls. Let's move on to our AoE heals now. So we have Helios and Aspected Helios. Helios is again quite self-explanatory. It's just going to do an AoE heal, and then you have Aspected Helios, which if you've played White Mage, this is pretty much Medica 1 and Medica 2. Aspected Helios is going to add a regen effect, initial heal of 250 potency, and then of course, as I said, the regen effect 150 potency for every target, and this is going to last 15 seconds. So this is great. What we're going to do is when we are in a raid instance and a raid wide goes out, we're going to use Aspected Helios rather than Helios, and this is going to give a regen to everyone. It's more MP efficient and it's going to be more HP efficient as well. The only time we'll really catch ourselves using normal Helios is when we already have Aspected Helios up and we want those extra heals. Usually unnecessary, but it can happen, so just be wary of that. Know that it is in your kit. We then have Collective Unconscious. This will make a bubble around ourselves, and everyone who enters the bubble is going to take 10% less damage. This includes ourselves. When we use this ability, if we move or do an action, it's going to cancel it out, so we won't get the 10% anymore, but it has a added effect of a regen, and anyone who enters, including ourselves again, is going to have this regen effect. And this regen effect is going to linger, and it has 100 cure potency for every regen tick. This is an OGCD as well, and it's on a 60-second cooldown, and we get it at level 58, so pretty early in our leveling experience as an Astro. So make sure we're fully utilizing this in leveling content. If you just want to put a heal, a regen on the tank, then this is excellent for that. It's going to leave a regen on the tank, but it won't leave the 10% damage taken. So what you want to do is just pop this on the tank in a big pull and then take it down again real quick, and you're not losing any DPS or any GCDs or anything like that. And yeah, it's just going to serve you really well for dungeons and also raid wides when say if a boss is untargetable, we put the bubble up, everyone's going to be in the bubble, everyone's going to take 10% less damage, and once the bubble is gone, everyone's going to have the regen effect, which is, you know, just all around pretty good. If the boss is targetable and it is a raid wide, then we can just pop it up real quick, give everyone a regen, then take it down again. Pretty simple. We then have Celestial Opposition. This is like our OGCD AoE heal. What we're going to do is, this is on a 60-second cooldown. We'll get it at level 60, and it has an initial heal of 200 cure potency and an additional effect of a regen for 100 potency per regen tick, and it lasts 15 seconds, just like Collective Unconscious regen, and it's also every 60 seconds. So we want to really use this whenever we need it, more or less. We can stack it with Collective Unconscious, or we can rotate these two regens if we need to. This is also really good for raid wide damage and really good for just putting on your tank as well. So in dungeons, make sure we're putting this up on the tank. In raid instances, make sure we're doing it after a raid wide. Then we have Earthly Star. Now, we get this at level 62. It's on a 60-second cooldown. That tooltip might look incredibly overwhelming, but don't worry, I'm going to explain it. When we put Earthly Star down, it's a massive AoE. It's not going to do anything yet, but for the first 10 seconds, it's going to be a bit of a bad version. We don't want to use this. And when we use Earthly Star, it's going to make the Earthly Star on our hotbar into a different action, which is like a detonation. So we can press it again and it will detonate the Earthly Star. But we don't want to do this for the first 10 seconds Earthly Star is up. We want to do this after that initial 10 seconds, because if we do it for the first 10 seconds, it's going to do 205 potency and damage to all enemies and a 540 cure potency to all our allies. If we wait those 10 seconds though, it's going to be upgraded to Giant Dominance. This is instead going to damage all enemies for 310 potency and heal all of our allies for 720. So this is just outright better to wait out that first 10 seconds and then pop it. We don't really want to pop it before that because it's just bad. We can also wait out the entire buff and it'll just pop itself as well. So just be wary of that. This is great for raid wides. This is great for our DPS output, because it's AoE damage and it's also pretty good single target damage. It's on the OGCD, so we're not losing anything. And it's also just great healing overall. So just make sure we're fully utilizing this. This is one of those abilities that we want to use on cooldown because it's so good. It's big heals, big damage, and more or less saving Collective Unconscious and Celestial Opposition for when we need it, and Earthly Star we more want to use for when it's off cooldown. But we can, of course, align it with raid-wide damage and tank damage. So it's great overall, lots of versatility to this ability, very good ability overall. Moving on, we have Celestial Intersection. This is a barrier which we can put on a single target. It has a cooldown of 30 seconds and we get it at level 74. The initial hit of this is going to do 200 cure potency, and when we put it on our party member, it will take that 200 potency and it will make 200% of that potency into a barrier. So the stronger your healing potency, of course, the stronger this barrier is going to be. So this is great for putting on the tank for tank busters, for filler damage in dungeons. It's got a lot of versatility to it again. And when we get to level 88, we'll have 2 charges of this. So just like Essential Dignity, we'll have 2 charges of this, which is just brilliant. Really good ability. Make sure we're getting full use out of this. We then have Horoscope, kind of like Earthly Star in the upgrade department, but not really. So we get this at level 76. It's on a 60-second cooldown. And when we use it, it's going to last 10 seconds. It'll change the hotbar button into another ability. And when we press it again, it's going to give a 200 cure potency to everyone. If we use Aspected Helios or Helios during the buff, then it's going to upgrade it into Horoscope Helios, which is going to last 30 seconds instead, and it's going to do a 400 cure potency. This is situational, and you might not catch yourself doing the upgraded version, just doing the weaker version. It's just a little weak AoE heal. That's usually what I catch myself doing, but you can use it for the upgraded version, and that's also good. So highly versatile ability. Make sure we're getting full usage out of this. It's good for raid-wide damage, just a little top up, get us back up to health, or it's also good to just use on the tank individually and get them back up in a dungeon pool. Then we have Neutral Sect. This is a very versatile ability. We get it at level 80. It's on a 120-second recast. It's going to increase our healing magic potency by 20%. Every time we use this ability, it will upgrade our Aspected Benefic and Aspected Helios to create barriers on top of the regens that they also have. When we use it with Aspected Benefic, it's going to make a barrier of 250% of the HP restored. so scaling off our heal again. And when we do Aspected Helios, it's going to again create a barrier of 125% of the HP restored from the Aspected Helios. What I typically tend to do with this is in a dungeon, I will use it on the tank before the pull, and that's going to stay for a good amount of time. And then when this is about to drop off, I'll pop another one on the tank just for good measure and to keep that barrier and regen rolling. In a raid instance, I'll usually try and use this when the boss it becomes untargetable, and I'll put it on as many people as possible. And then if 2 tanks are going to be tanking at the same time before anything is targetable, I want to pop this on both of my tanks, and they're going to have a barrier and a regen. 20% more potency on the barrier and the regen as well because of the neutral sector. So overall, really good ability. Make sure we're getting full usage out of this. We then have Exaltation. We get this at level 86, and it's on a 60-second cooldown. This is a single target ability, and who we use it on is going to reduce their damage taken by 10%. It lasts 8 seconds, and when the effect expires, it's going to heal them for 500 cure potency. So this is just brilliant. It's on such a short cooldown. Great for putting on the tank in dungeon pools. Great for putting on the tank for a tank buster. And just great overall for putting on the tank in with filler damage and all that sort of good stuff. So I do love this ability. Very good, very versatile. Make sure we're getting full usage out of it. Then we have Macrocosmos. This is on the GCD. We get it at level 90. It has a recast of 180 seconds, so quite a long time. This is also sort of damage, so it's size to damage, but we'll go over that in a bit. Initially, it's going to do 250 damage for the first enemy, and then 40% less for all remaining enemies. This is damage neutral on single target and damage positive on AoE. So when we use this, it's going to change Macrocosmos into another button on our hotbar, which changes it from a GCD to an OGCD heal. And when it's the OGCD heal, basically it has a 200 cure potency, but the more damage it receives, so the more damage the whole party or one person receives, is going to affect how strong this heal is. Up to 50% damage taken is going to be compiled into that heal. So the more damage taken, the stronger it will be, up to 50% damage. It's a little bit hard to wrap your head around, but basically don't think about it too much. When there's a raid wide going out or a tank buster or anything like that, use Macrocosmos before that, and then as soon as the raid wide goes out, then use the ability again, and we're going to basically have a really strong and healthy heal for the whole party, or just the tank in a tank buster situation. Overall, very versatile ability. Make sure we're getting full usage out of it. Let's move on to our offensive spells. Not too much to go over here, really. So we have Malefic, Combust, and Gravity. Malefic, obviously, we want to use this on single target. Combust, we want to always keep this up 100% of the time in a single target situation. And then Gravity, we want to be spamming Gravity on 2+ targets as it's damage positive. Not too much to go over here. This is just our DPS rotation and how we'll be using our offensive spells. Let's move on to our utility kit now. So we have Lightspeed, incredible ability by the way. We get at level 6, so very early on. It's on a 90-second cooldown, and it's going to reduce our cast times for spells by 2.5 seconds, and it's going to last 15 seconds. This essentially makes all of our casts instant, other than Resurrect. This is a great cooldown for using on the pull and for DPSing, but it's also a really good mobility skill. So what we want to do is, if we learn a fight and we know a heavy movement part of the fight is going to come up, then we'll use Lightspeed, and this is going to nullify all of our cast times, and we can just run around the map, dodging AoEs, doing mechanics, doing whatever we need to do, but still keeping up our DPS or throwing in heals when we need to without having to stand still and cast. So incredible ability. Make sure we're getting full usage out of this. I love this ability. It's amazing. It's probably one of the best mobility abilities in the game when it comes to healers. Okay, then we have the really, really nitty-gritty, complicated stuff, which is draw, play, and redraw. I'll have all of them up on the screen now because they all kind of tie in together, but draw and play will be first unlocked at level 30, and draw and play is going to give us access to our card system. I'll put the cards on the screen here. I don't want to talk over them too much, but basically we have the balance, the arrow, the spear, the bowl, the ewer, and the spire. The balance, the arrow, and the spear are melee DPS and tank, so you want to use these almost exclusively on those roles. You can use them on range, but they're going to be weaker. That's where the bowl, the ewer, and the spire come in. These are going to be used on the ranged DPS or healers, almost exclusively on ranged DPS. And what we want to do is, of course, spread these out across those party members, right? Quite simple stuff, but you'll notice they give us these signs. Now, pay attention to these signs, but just keep in mind, we'll go over them once we get to the respective ability. So just keep in mind the signs, we'll go over that, don't worry. But to go back to the subject, when we draw, it's going to draw one of those 6 cards, and then the play action will change into the respective card, and we can give this card to any party member or ourselves. We then also have redraw at level 40, And this is basically going to give us access to a redraw. Whenever we use draw, we have one access to using one redraw every time. So we can play our hand RNG and maybe get a more optimal card. Say if we have only melee DPS in our party and we got a ranged card, then we want to try and redraw to get more of an optimal melee DPS card instead. We'll come back to the card system in just a moment. Let me go over a few other things real quick. So first we have Sinistry. Sinistry is a buff which we get at level 50. It's on 120-second cooldown, and basically what the tooltip is telling us here is when we use this, say if we have a tank and we're healing a tank, and then a DPS drops really low, but we have to keep healing the tank because the tank is also taking a lot of damage. So we put Sinistry on that DPS, and then we resume healing the tank, or the other way around. It doesn't really matter too much. It depends who needs more attention. But basically, we're going to keep healing the tank in this situation, and 40% of the healing that I'm giving to the tank is going to go on that weak DPS. And basically, if I use a Benefic 2 on the tank, it's going to give 40% of my Benefic 2 onto that DPS as well. Not instead, but as well. So it's adding an extra 40%. We can also use this on a tank individually to double up our healing. Say if a tank is really taking a beating, then we can use Sinistry on the tank, and this is going to double up their healing. Well, not double it up, it's only doing 40% more. But basically, if we use Benefic 2 spamming on a tank with Sinistry up, it's going to do the initial Benefic 2, and then it's going to have another Benefic 2 for 40% of the potency of that Benefic 2, if that makes sense. So for me personally, I tend to not use GCD heals as much as possible, but if I do need to use them, then I'll use it alongside Sinistry, and this is just going to buff my heals overall, and it's overall a good time. We then have Divination. Divination, there's a lot to go into Divination, but the simple part is we get it at level 50, it's on 120-second cooldown, and it increases everyone's damage and yourself by 6% for 15 seconds. This is really good to use with raid buffs in a raid instance, but in a dungeon instance, we're pretty much just going to use this off cooldown. In a raid instance, just make sure we're lining this up with our party's raid buffs. So whenever you have those conversations with your raid members about, oh, we're going to use 2 minutes here, that includes Divination. So make sure you're paying attention to your party when they're talking about that kind of stuff. This will only really happen in raid instances, so don't worry too much about it. But do try and align it with other people's raid buffs when it comes to extreme trials, which won't be so communicated in voice chats and stuff. Okay, let's move back onto the card. So we have Astrodyne. You know what I was mentioning about the signs on the cards? This is where Astrodyne comes into play and where the signs come into play. Basically, what we do is Astrodyne, we get at level 50, and for each sign that we collect, so every time we use a card, the card is going to give us a sign. So the balance, for example, gives us a solar sign, and so does the bowl. So for every melee card that gives a singular sign, so does a ranged card give that same sign. They always correlate to each other, if that makes sense. With Astrodyne, let me go over the tooltip really quick. When we have one sign, so this would be 3 of the same sign, because we can only use this when we have 3 signs up, it's only going to grant us Harmony of the Spirit, which is just gradual MP restoration. If we have 2 unique signs, so 2 signs and then 1 odd sign, this is going to grant us Harmony of the Spirit and Harmony of the Body. Harmony of the Body is going to reduce spellcast time, recast time, and auto attack delay by 10%. This is really, really important, and this is our most important part of Astrodyne. Then we have 3 sign types: Harmony of the Spirit, Harmony of the Body, and Harmony of the Mind. Harmony of the Mind is going to increase our damage dealt and healing magic potency by 5%. Also pretty important, but we can tend to not go for it as much as 2 signs. 2 signs is the most important part. As long as we get 2 signs on our Astrodyne, we are good. So if that doesn't really make sense, let me try and explain it for you. What you want to do is every time you use a card, when you draw a card, hopefully I'm showing some footage, is you'll see a little sign on the card, and basically the easy way to do this is just make sure you're trying to get as many unique signs as possible. So we draw, I don't know, whatever card we're drawing on the footage, right? But we're drawing a card, we put it on ourselves or whatever during combat, and it's going to add a sign to our Astro gauge, and then we're going to draw another card, give it to someone else or ourselves again in this instance, and it's going to add a second sign, and it was another unique sign. We're then going to wait 30 seconds. Hopefully I'll just skip through that 30 seconds, and we're going to draw another card. Now it's either going to be a third sign, a unique sign, or it's going to be one of the same signs. This is fine as long as we have 2 unique signs, because we're going to then get our Harmony of the Body, which is our most important part. So that's what you want to be aiming for. Hopefully that makes sense, and that example will make sense to you. Okay, moving on to our final utility sort of thing is Minor Arcana. This is pretty simple. What we do is, we can only do this in combat by the way, but it's going to draw either Lord of the Crowns or Lady of the Crowns. When we get Lady of the Crowns, this is a nice little AoE heal, pretty nifty, pretty effective sometimes, but really I like to get Lord of the Crowns more because Lord of the Crowns does damage and I love damage. Lord of the Crowns is going to do an AoE damage OGCD for 250 potency, and Lady of the Crowns is going to do an AoE heal for 400 potency, cure potency. So this is kind of RNG, you're either going to get more damage or you're going to get more healing. If you do get the more healing, just be wary of using this in a good situation, but don't hold on to it for too long because you want to ideally get rid of this before your next Minor Arcana. And then also going over that, Minor Arcana is up every 60 seconds and we get it at level 70. That'll cover all of the utility spells and all that stuff. Let's quickly go over some spells that are shared across all healers. So we have Ascend, which is on every single healer. It is our Resurrect. We then have Roll Actions. We've got Repose. This is just a sleep. So it has usage, but don't stress too much about it. Usually doesn't see much usage at all. But yeah, I'll show you the tooltip. You can evaluate it for yourself. We then have Asuna. This is super important, mostly in dungeons, but it can come into play in raids. When something can be cleansed, which Asuna does, by the way, it cleanses detrimental effects. It will have like a white line above the debuff or like inside the debuff. You should see some footage, and basically what I'll do is I'll cast Asuna on myself and it will cleanse that debuff and get rid of it. This is what you want to be looking out for and cleansing them appropriately. We then have Swift Cast. In progression, almost exclusively saved for our Resurrect, so we can use this to resurrect someone instantly. But once we know the fight and we're kind of optimal and kind of comfortable in a fight, we can use this to cast a spell instantly while moving, so really good mobility skill on top of light speed, of course. Then have Lucid Dreaming, which is just going to restore MP. It's on a 60-second cooldown. And this is basically our MP management ability. I usually use Lucid Dreaming around 7 to 8k MP left, depending on the situation. We then have Shorecast. This is on a 120-second cooldown, and it's going to allow us to cast spells without interruption, and it's also going to nullify most knockback and drawing effects. So really good for when a boss or enemy or whatever, right, is going to cast a knockback, and it's going to usually knock us back, but if we cast Shorecast, it's going to nullify that knockback, so we can keep uptime doing DPS or throwing out heals when we need to. We then have Rescue, a rather niche ability, but basically what we do is if we see someone in imminent danger, we can rescue them over to our position, avoiding them getting hit by an AoE, maybe saving them getting a vulnerability stack, which saves us having to babysit and heal them more. So Rescue can honestly save you a lot of pain if you use it correctly. Okay guys, that's every single ability Astro has to its kit and how to fully utilize them to my understanding. Let's move on to the opener and rotation. So here what I'm going to do in my opener and rotation is first I'm going to draw a card and then I'm going to wait out. Say if this was in a trial instance or a raid instance, then hopefully our team can wait for us, but don't pressure your team to wait for you because this time it's going to take, you're going to have to wait like a whole 30 seconds. Pretty long time to wait. So sometimes it won't happen, so don't think too much about this. We're then going to cast Earthly Star before the pull because ideally we want our Earthly Star to get the effects of raid buffs because this is going to just increase our damage overall, and you know, Earthly Stars are very important to get raid buffs. We're then going to cast a Mind Potion before pull, and then we're going to go absolutely ham on our rotation here. I'll have a picture on the screen here of exactly what you need to do, but you're going to have to practice. Trust me, this is a lot of practice to do. I barely managed to pull off this opener, to be honest. It took me several attempts and takes to do this, but think about this in a real situation. You're going to be pulling those cards and putting them on people who are appropriately meant to have those cards, so a ranged card on a ranged and melee card on a melee. There's a lot of thinking on the spot to do as an Astro. My advice to you is practice and get used to it. You will get used to it over time as an Astro, trust me. It's going to be difficult, it is a difficult job, but if you want to play an Astro and you're serious about it, I believe that you will get better at this over time, and you'll do a good job as an Astro. So just believe in yourself. You can do it as long as you keep at it. Keep at the Astro. Let's move on though. So I would normally do a dungeon example, but Astro is honestly all over the place depending on what tank it has, and my dungeon examples was constantly getting a warrior, and I didn't have anyone online at the time to actually help me out and not be a warrior, and most of my friends who I know have tanks leveled is usually only a warrior, so basically I couldn't really get good footage because healing a warrior is a joke and you literally don't need to heal a warrior. So my dungeon example is kind of in the bin for this video. but I'm going to talk over what exactly we should be doing in a dungeon anyway. So when we're leveling, of course, making full use out of Celestial Opposition, Collective Unconscious, and Earthly Stars to heal the tank. Making sure we're having Expected Benefic on the tank at all times when we can, because this is really going to help us out, keep the tank alive, and continue to do DPS. Do note that as an Astro, you might be catching yourself doing GCD heals to keep the tank alive, depending on how good the tank is, how good their CD usage is, how good their gear is, the list goes on. So if you do catch yourself using a lot of GCD heals on Astro, more so than other healers, don't feel so bad about it, because honestly, it takes getting used to, and also it's very reliant on how good your tank is as well. To other healers like Sage, for example, I could carry a tank as a Sage very easily. Same with Scholar. As an Astro, I don't find that so much to be the case. I feel like if you need to cut in the slack, you really do need to throw in Benefic 1s and 2s all over the place. So it can get hairy as an Astro. Just keep that in mind when you're leveling an Astro. Keep that stuff in mind. You'll be good though, trust me. So that's my little dungeon talk. Really not too much to it. I do apologize that I couldn't get any proper footage. Just, you know, make sure you're taking use of your cooldowns, your aspect of benefics, and all that good stuff, and you will be fine, trust me. As for how are we going to raid as an Astro, so let's have a quick little discussion how we're going to do it. I am by no means a healer main, but I do have some decent knowledge and decent research up my sleeves. So when we're raiding as an Astro, there are a few things to note. Our divination timing, keeping that aligned with our buddies, our 2-minute cooldowns with our buddies, our raid buddies, and also our card usage. Remember, our draw is on a 30-second cooldown, so when we draw a card, we can actually hold on to it for a little bit here to line it up with raid buffs. This could happen, so just be wary of this. If we draw a card, we have a really good card, but no raid buffs are up for, say, 20 seconds, we can hold on to that card for at least 20 seconds, right? And then put it on people for raid buffs. And that's just going to be overall positive, because remember, and if you don't know, damage increasing abilities are multiplicative, or is it additive? God, I can't remember exactly. But basically this means, I think it's multiplicative. But basically what this means is it's going to make not just like 6% more potency, but because they're having other damaging increasing effects, it's going to actually make the potency even more than what you would think, if that makes sense. I can't exactly do the maths, but you're just going to have to, like, believe me when I say this. There's lots of research done into it. That stuff is multiplicative. So if you're adding raid buffs on top of each other, it's going to make them even stronger. So say if you have a 10% raid buff and another 10% raid buff, it's not going to be 20%, it's going to be more than that. I can't give you the exact numbers, but it's going to be more than that. So this is what I mean by it's very important to align our divinations with our raid buffs, our party raid buffs. And also if we can hold on to a card at no detrimental effect to us, our buffs or anything like that, then we should be holding on to a card for raid buffs to make that multiplicative adjustments to our DPS even better. So that's my advice from me to you, as someone who has delved a little bit into raiding as a healer and done a little bit of research on the side. That is what I can tell you about raiding as a healer and raiding as an Astro especially. So just remember, as an Astro, you're bringing so much kit and utility to your party that you're going to be increasing the overall damage of your party by an incredible amount. So it is a good job to play. You're bringing a hell of a lot to your group, so don't feel too bad about your own DPS. Although do try and push out as much DPS as you can. It is still very important. Okay, so the stats and gearing of a Astrologian. Let me quickly go over this. Shouldn't take me too long. As an Astro, our primary focus is spell speed up to a certain point. So when I say that is, if you meld spell speed and you melded as much spell speed as you can, say if you have a spell speed meld that isn't doing anything. So what I mean by this is if we have spell speed on our gloves, for example, and if we took a meld out of those gloves and it wasn't actually changing our recast time, that would basically mean that spell speed in those gloves is pointless, and instead we should replace it with some critical hit rate. So to put it into basic, what I'm going to tell you is, if you want to mainly focus on Astro, meld as much spell speed as you can, with some crit slots being in there to make up for no dead spell speed. Because the more spell speed you get, the higher the recast threshold is going to get as well. After we've done that, if we want to be more of an Omni healer than focus on critical hit rate, it's not going to make a huge difference. I mean, if you're serious about Astro, it will, but if you want to be an Omni healer, go for crit. After we've done the spell speed, the crit stuff, then our next stat would be direct hit and determination. Personally, I am now more of a direct hit healer than I was ever before, but if you want to focus more on determination, then it's not a huge difference of damage. You will get more damage with direct hit, but if you want the extra healings from the determination, then you can go for that too. I don't really suggest it though. I personally think the direct hit, the damage is more beneficial because you're going to just kill stuff faster and you're probably going to save yourself a heal or two down the line anyway by doing that. But this is personal preference for me personally, and it's just my suggestion from me to you. After that, there's of course Piety. Now, Piety is very personal preference. I've never been a Piety healer. I've never been a Savage progression healer, but I have done Savage content as a healer. And I've never been a Piety healer, like, ever. I've never liked the stat. I've never felt it necessary. But I do know some healers do like it, and there will be more informed healers who do like it. So, for me personally, I don't like it. Not my stat. But if you do like Piety, if you like a bit more MP, regeneration, all that good stuff, then go for Piety. This is completely up to you, and it is up to your comfort level of Piety. So, that does conclude the guide. Now we're going to roll the outro. So, I mean, if you're a very kind person and you want to stay for the algorithm, then please do go ahead. If you don't really care for this, then you can skip ahead, whatever. Basically, what I want to talk about is how do I feel about Astro. I found this job interesting, to say the least. It's very busy. It's probably the most busy job in the entire game. You're healing, you're doing damage, you're managing your MP, you're managing all your utility, and you're managing your card system and making on-spot decisions of what card goes to who and stuff like that. It's wow, it's incredibly difficult, to say the least. And anyone who plays Astro out there, if you're an Astro main and you've learned something from this video, that would be gratifying for me, because honestly I have so much respect for you as an Astro main. I personally wouldn't want to play this job after this point. Probably a similar situation to how I feel about Gunbreaker. I feel like Astro could use some work, and I don't really know in what way, I'll be honest. I'm not a healer main, I'm a tank main, so I could have valid suggestions for Gunbreaker, but for Astro, I don't want to delve too much into it. I just think there could be a little bit more to make this class a little bit more approachable. I feel like this job is very just not approachable at all. If you're new to healing or new to the game in general, then I would go for any other healer other than Astro. I would say this is the highest skill ceiling healer in the game. And it is incredibly good as well. It's a very good healer. I think the balance is quite good with Astro. If you want to play probably the hardest job in the game, you will be rewarded for it, because it's going to benefit your group and it's going to benefit you. It's going to benefit the speed of which you kill stuff. It's going to benefit the speed of which you progress fights. It's an overall beneficial healer, but it is incredibly difficult to play. If you're up for the challenge, go for it. If you want to learn how to play Astro and you're committed and you like the aesthetic and you like the mechanics and all that stuff, then if you like it, you're going to play it well, because you're going to learn to play it well and you're going to learn to just be better at it. So if you want to go for it, I believe in you, go for it. Anyway, that will do my closing thoughts, how I feel about Astro. If you are an Astro main, props to you. I have mad respect for you. But other than that, I would like to thank you for staying to the end and sticking with it. That I very much appreciate, and I appreciate your time. If you liked the video, then please do give it a thumbs up. That will really help me a bunch. It will go miles. If you enjoyed the content as well, please do consider hitting that subscribe button, as I make content for guides on jobs and instances and all that good stuff. I'll be making guides for the casual sided content, for the hardcore sided content, and yeah, the jobs as well. So I'm gonna probably update these job guides further down the line. Maybe in 2023 is when I'll be updating them, because I'm gonna have a heck ton more knowledge into these jobs then, so you can look forward to that as well. But for now, this is the guides and how I feel about them. And I've done my due research, I've read articles, I've went through the Balance Discord as well. Props to the Balance Discord. So if you want to join the Balance Discord, that'll be in the description below. You can go ahead and join that. And they're helpful people. They've got a lot of resources there for you. So maybe if something's not clear in this video, either ask in the comments below or go to the Balance Discord and look for the answer or ask the question there. Either way is okay with me. If I did miss anything as well, make sure you leave it in the comments below. That would be really helpful to me personally, and hopefully helpful to other people as well. Or just let me know how you feel about Astro in the comments below. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. How do you feel about this healer? Do you find it difficult to play? Are you struggling with it? Do you find it easy to play? Maybe I'm just bad at the job. Let me know. I'd love to know, because if you playing it well and you find it easy, then you're honestly like probably a big brain. I'll be honest. You're probably really big brain. But yeah, anyway, enough about that. I am going to finish the video before I drag it on any longer. I'll see you guys in the next one. Take it easy, guys. Stay safe. We out. Peace.